Agenda. First of all, thank you very much to everyone, in particular Paola Deda and Giampiero Bambagioni, because we worked a lot together to organize this event and to organize the paper Giampiero will present. Thank you very much. And what about us? The Center of Excellence, EXUF, was established in 2021 by the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe, UNECE, and LUC, Catania University. Our mission is to promote sustainable finance strategies in infrastructure and smart cities, and we would like to accelerate the process in particular, the process regarding the progress to obtain the SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. For us, it's very, very important. And we provide a thematic platform called EXUF, offering best practices, research, training, and case studies. It's a free platform dedicated to public authorities, academics, students working on sustainable infrastructure and urban transformation. Good morning, welcome. And as a part of activities, EXUF is very involved in public-private partnership studies, and we have books and papers, all is free in our platform. How about housing? Housing is a critical aspect for young people and for everyone. I think housing affordability crisis prevents young individuals from leaving their parental homes. So for young people, mobility is crucial, and to have mobility, a correct mobility in Europe, first of all, we need to have housing and a system of housing comfortable and suitable for our young people, first of all. Then for everyone, but let me say, first of all, for young people, because young generation now, young European generation has a very great challenge. We have to build Europe, and in Europe we need to have mobility. Here, for example, in our university, we have 600 students every year coming from everywhere, and so the first we have of course a residence, but the first problem, because the residence is not only for international students but also for national students coming from everywhere from Italy, the first problem is the housing. And so I think to build a new Europe for new generation, we have to think about this problem, but not only for a young generation. What we are doing, we are opening a debate today. We are working to write guidelines. This is one of the work of our Center of Research. And to open the debate, it's fundamental to have different voices from different sectors, because it's not so easy to build a consensus guidelines if we are talking only between economists or between real estate players and so on. So today we have a very fantastic agenda. Thanks to everyone to be here in LUC University to discuss about this important and crucial theme for the next generation EU. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna Gervasoni, Rector LUC University and Director EXUF. And now I'd like to introduce Paola Deda, Director of Forest, Land and Housing Division of UNECE.
That's very good. Thank you and good morning to everybody. Thank you very much to Luke, to Anna, and to all colleagues, to Giampiero that I know is there, and Luca that I see sitting there as well. Thank you for this introduction. Let me give you a bit more specific information about the meeting today and what we are hoping actually to gather from you and the debate that hopefully will start in this meeting today. Well, first of all, UNICE. What does UNICE do in the field of housing? We have a committee that meets annually, the Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management. And every year, the committee discusses many challenges related to cities, including the specific one of housing. As Anna correctly said, this is no longer a problem, it's an emergency. In many cities all across Europe and the EC region, housing has become an emergency. And this is the reason why the committee decided to call and convene this year a ministerial meeting. So a meeting of ministers responsible for housing on the 8th of October in Geneva. This is more or less 10 years after ministers adopted the UN Geneva Charter for Sustainable Housing, which set some very important principles and actions to achieve sustainable housing in the EC region. 10 years after, housing remains an emergency. So the committee decided to prepare not guidelines, but actually commitments for ministers. So we are looking at commitments here for ministers to adopt at the meeting on the 8th of October. So what we would like you to do today is really to discuss the financing aspects of housing and help us complete, and these commitments are already being drafted, and shortly I'll just give you a sense of them, but really to understand better the aspects related to the financing of housing and financial challenges related to housing. I know there are many experts around the table, and as Anna also mentioned, there will be a paper prepared by Luke and Mr. Bambagioni on this topic. So just to tell you what we are looking at, and as I said, it's not guidelines, but it's real commitments that the ministers are expected to adopt. At the moment, there are 10. The first one is about developing and adopting an integrated national housing strategies. That's been found that many countries lack such a coherent strategy. The second one is investing in decommodification of housing. So again, not housing only as real estate and speculative market, but really a stock of public, cooperative, social, and community-led housing models that are necessary and needed now more than ever. Retrofitting the housing stock. We know that there is housing being built, but there is old housing stock which is not being retrofitted in all cities across the region, hence the need to commit to do so. Then establish active land policies at the national and local levels. Again, housing is based also on effective land policies, so the need to establish and counter speculative practices, enabling affordable housing supply and promoting equitable land use. Creating national housing data observatories in regional data sharing platforms. Not everybody can count on these data and the availability of data to support evidence-based decision making, and overall monitor the housing needs and affordability trends in cities across the region. The sixth point and commitment is the adoption of innovative financial tools such as green bonds, sustainability-linked loans, and blended finance instruments to attract private investment in sustainable housing. And this is probably also the area where the meeting today can really focus on and elaborate this point and provide information on how we can really adopt and a minister can adopt these financing tools. The seventh commitment is recognizing and reinforcing the central role of local governments in implementing sustainable housing policies through legal and financial empowerment and establishing strategic cross-sectoral platforms. Let's not forget that the committee is composed of national delegates. At the same time, the committee also works with the Forum of Mayors, keeping this double dimension, the local and the national, close together. And we know that especially in the housing issues, the closeness and the cooperation between the two levels is essential for effective policies. The eighth commitment is the promotion of regenerative densification, is a way, it's a terminology that we are using to say cities need to be more compact, but at the same time, it's the concept of 15-minute cities. We just don't want to more compact city for the sake of it, but we want an intelligent reuse of existing buildings and the integration of affordable green housing with well-connected neighbors that offer access to all the services and green spaces. Ninth commitment is enhancing international cooperation and peer learning mechanisms. This is important. We can learn from each other, good practices, capacity building, and really enable countries and local authorities to address housing challenges. And the last but not least is to align national housing policies with the principles of the Geneva UN Charter. Let's not forget, this is an important document with principles such as social inclusion, economic efficiency, and environmental sustainability. So Anna, I stop here, and I'm really happy to follow the discussions today. I'll be with you until 11:15, then unfortunately I have to leave you, but I know you're in good hands also with Giampiero there, was our vice chair, and hopefully get feedback from you on your deliberations today and the paper that will also be based on these discussions. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you, Paola Deda. And now we leave the floor to Giampiero Bambagioni, Vice President of Committee on Urban Development, Housing and Land Management, UNICEF.
So, good morning, everybody. First of all, let me thank Anna and Paola for promoting this initiative. Anna mentioned the study, the paper, but the paper will be published in the next days. So, for the moment, let me make some general consideration about this, the framework that is necessary to focus in this moment. So, promoting policies related to affordable housing and action plan implies knowledge and analysis of specific phenomena. Therefore, let me share some OECD data. In this slide, we can see the diversity of context, the percentage of owners with the mortgages, renters and the private markets, and the renters with the subsidies, etc. For example, as for owners, we record a percentage between about 32 of Germany and 72 of Italy. Instead, a high percentage of subsidies, which covers about 20% of the rental market, is recorded in UK and France. Again, we can detect the social rental housing stock very high in UK and France. In this graph, we can see the public spending on subsidies. Again, in this graph, in a context of a constant increase in prices over the last 25 years. And let me add also on an increase in management costs, for example, energy cost. In this complex scenario, in most countries, even those with a high percentage of home ownership, the stakeholders' problem is how to contribute to reducing the affordable housing gap by correlating the regulatory framework, policies, and goals of the different stakeholders' expectations and constraints, for example, for banking sector, the Basel III agreement and the credit requirement regulation. As we know, the main actors involved in affordable housing policies and initiatives are state and local authorities, institutional investors, investment funds, REITs, and so on, housing cooperatives, promoters and construction industry, banking sector. At the same time, the macro scenario involves the three dimensions of the sustainable development, environmental, social, and economic. This dimension must be correlated with the housing market, housing conditions and affordability, public policies and to promote affordable housing, national legal framework, access to the capital market, expectation and constraints of the industrial supply chain, promoters, investors, banking sector, and so on. Between opportunities and constraints that are the precondition for access to the capital market, it is necessary to consider the appropriate tools. For example, technical and economic feasibility projects and the forms of public-private partnership that, for example, in Italy are regulated by law. Among the appropriate law tools, we can and must include green financing, green mortgages, green loans. Loans and services for the green economy driven by ESG transition. For the United Nations, green financing plays an important role in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. For this purpose, UNEC has adopted principles for green finance for sustainable real estate infrastructure and urban transformation projects. The principles are aimed at supporting public investments in green projects by governments, government agencies, cities and local authorities, developers, asset managers, and institutional investors, also involved in PPP projects. In accessing international capital markets in compliance with the regulatory framework and with the aim of contributing to sustainable development, to promote innovation and long-term sustainability, using the levers of green loans, green bonds, green mortgages, green projects, and so on. At the same time, green financing is an essential tool to achieve sustainable developments. Housing and industrial properties emits around 40% of greenhouse gases and use over 37% of energy resources. Sustainable green financing should take place in line with the following principles. Let me recall: active engagement of capital providers, climate neutrality and the resilience of green urban solutions, social dimension and affordability of green urban solutions, innovative green financial tools, improved regulatory framework to support green financing, ensuring long-term stability of green real estate and infrastructure financing, and sustainable ecosystem approach. So, in conclusion, affordable and sustainable housing and innovative financial are two sides of the same coin. An appropriate correlation could significantly promote the improvement of the quality of life of thousands of citizens in all the UNEC countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Giampiero Bambagioni. So, like Paola Deda said, the house is an emergency. So, let's start to discuss the topic of the day. And to do that, we'll do that with Luca Bertalot, Secretary General European Mortgage Federation, Kelly Russell Cattella, Head of Sustainability and Communication and Chairman of Sustainable Innovation Committee of COIMA, Giovanna Della Posta, Deputy Chairman of Equiter, and Giancarlo Scotti, CEO of CDP Real Estate Asset SGR. So, Bertalot, what role do banks play in shaping a more sustainable and inclusive housing ecosystem?
Good morning to everyone, and thank you for the kind invitation to be here with you this morning. I think that housing is an emergency, but is probably the biggest opportunity that we have in the single market to create an ecosystem which can support the broad economy. Housing is a fundamental element for the shape of the life of all of us, is the most important investment of every single family. Is also the shape of our house gives the shape of our cities. And the cities are the place where 80% of the European GDP is created, is innovated, is changed. And in a transition economy, the shape of our cities will make the shape of the future of the Europe. On top of this, for me, housing is a fundamental cog for making, for the first time, a labor market. We all want to live where we have the best working opportunity. We cannot reach this opportunity if we don't have access to housing in the city where there is a job opportunity. Paola this morning spoke about two dimensions, local and national. I think that there is a third dimension which is extremely important, which is the international one, which sounds to me very much capital markets. The capital markets can play a fundamental role in pumping money, not only on the real estate sector, but also on the infrastructure that we need to shape the cities of tomorrow. I have the pleasure and the honor to represent 2,000 banks in the European landscape who have been, I think, playing an extremely important role already on affordability and also on giving a shape of the capital markets union. The banking union, I think, is one of the major successes of the last 20 years, where the robust banking sector was able to cope and to support the economy in dramatic moments. COVID, for example, but also in other moments. Or affordability. How many European citizens has a fixed rate mortgages? A fixed rate mortgages, when you have high inflation, it's a way to protect, to shield the family from the variation of variable rates. So this was a way how banks have been contributing actively in boosting the housing market. I think we can do more. 1 month ago, I met the Commissioner on Housing, Dan Jorgensen, and we brought a very concrete, bold proposal to the Commissioner with the intention to support radically and in a bold way the policy of the European Union in boosting the housing market. What we want to propose is to create a European mortgage for the first time. We don't have a European mortgage market. We have a lot of national markets. And this has to be supported with a strong system of guarantee, looking, for example, at the good example done in Italy, Fondo per la prima casa, where the banking sector was able to support the young generation, the fragile borrowers, with a strong support of capital markets. So this is what we can do.
But in your opinion, which measures are most effective in fostering successful public-private partnership in the real estate sector?
Well, we have a problem in Europe that we don't have a federal budget. So, I mean, this is a problem that, I think that Europe will not become Europe without tackling this kind of critical point, which is a dramatic political point. We need to make sure that capital markets will be able to support local authorities, province, city halls in making their housing policy. And we have a problem because, a lot of countries are very much exposed with public debt. Greece, Italy. Capital markets can mitigate this stress because, for example, if we have a state guarantee in Greece, the city hall of Athens, where I'm going tonight, they want to retrofit a big neighborhood. They can put a state guarantee on that. this asset can be moved to as an asset, as a collateral asset to an Italian bank, to a Danish bank, a Swedish bank, and this can be financed on capital markets as a Swedish bank. This actually will mitigate enormously the risk of having an over-debt country and will free capital for those countries, creating a level playing field. Because the dream of Europe is that Swedish citizens should have the same opportunity of a Greek citizens. But I mean, unfortunately, with the public debt, this is not true. It's not real. We need to mitigate this risk, and I think banks can play an important role in making efficient financing for public authorities, which, as Paola said, I think housing is primarily a local story. So we need to bring the money to the city halls. But we can build a mechanism with the intervention of CDP, with the intervention of the EIB, with the intervention of EBRD, the World Bank for the east part of Europe, that can really help in creating a mechanism that can move resources where is needed.
Thank you. So, Kelly Russell Catella, COIMA is involved in a very big project in Milan, the Olympic Village. Could you describe the experience of COIMA in this project?
Good morning, everyone. If I were to try to make a quick summary linked to the Olympic Village, I think I would state a clear vision with clear rules, and then, can you all hear me? I feel like it's not. Okay. And then collaboration. And I think some of the topics that were touched on before, I think it's actually a good example of these three realms coming together, because when COIMA, together with other partners, purchased the area, the rules were very clear about what we needed to build in the area. Yeah. The legacy was set for the Olympic Village, and so it was very clear for everyone to understand the Olympic Village, after the athletes will live during the games, will be then transformed into the largest student housing site in Italy with 1,700 beds. So obviously the clear rules set out by the various institutions involved, and in particular with the municipality, obviously helped us to be able to plan, because besides the student housing, there's also social housing on site, which we've made an agreement with Cooperativa CCL local in order to develop those sites. There's other social housing or affordable housing, and then obviously there's housing market in order to make the whole economic system work. If I go back specifically to the Olympic Village, was then created a specific fund where actually CDP is involved with their Fondo Nazionale Abitare Sociale, together with other institutional investors that are investing in Milan and investing in territorial development. So I think the collaboration that's come out is very clear, and I think in order to solve the housing problem, you have to have this type of collaboration. Then obviously, if you look to another side, which is not just the investment, but costs, we worked very closely with the real estate constructive industry to understand how we could reduce costs maximum. So we worked a lot on sustainability aspects of prefabricating. We've done a lot of wood construction using Ixlam in order to make the process as quickly but also sustainable as possible, but also cost efficient. Because when you're looking at city centers and you're purchasing areas that are being sold for a certain price, and you have investors that want a certain return, you have to be able to construct per square meter where the sum then goes to the market with, which is reasonable. And right now, not always is the situation clear for that financial return to be available in the end. And then besides just the construction or the thought process of the housing, I think besides the housing, we need to make a clear definition of then the services needed by the housing, because once you have families that are obviously in situations of social and affordable areas, you have to provide their reasonable services linked. So it's education for the families, healthcare services. And right now I feel, and this I think is something that could be proposed, is for example, in Italy, when you look at a ministry that works on urban development, and then Giancarlo has much more of an expert than I am to go in these details, but you don't speak with one ministry. So you go to the Ministry of Economics, you go to the Environmental Ministry, we'll be working with infrastructure. And it's very difficult to create those tables to work on in order to then create a real vision that can solve all the various problems.
Okay, so Luca Bertolot said us what he thinks about the measures are most effective in fostering successful public-private partnership in real estate sector. What do you think about that? You are a real estate operator. There are something that we can do to do better.
Well, first would be one of the considerations that I just made, although Giancarlo, which I'm totally, I recognize that what I say is difficult, is have one center of area of decision within the government, and that recognizes, I think the fact that housing is a major issue, if not the major issue, as I agree it's also an opportunity. It's not only in Italy. I mean, by chance, we're going to Athens this afternoon as well, and we'll be meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow because he wants to understand the development of the Olympic Village because they're thinking about future legacies. So he wants to understand how the financing works, how it is that we put together the team in order to make it, and also such quick timing. And then I think clear rules are fundamental, which in Italy is not always the case. So when you have a private, and it's obvious that these type of developments must go through a public-private collaboration. I think the days are gone where you think that public institution by itself, with the amount of investments, can do everything alone. So you need to have clear rules between the private and public collaboration. But I mean, I remain very optimistic. I think the example of the Olympic Village is a great example of things happening with clear rules and being able to move forward.
Okay, you can do that if you have the correct collaboration between public and private. Okay, so Giovanna Della Posta, what do you think about that?
Okay, let's. Before all, I want to thank you for inviting me. And sorry, I cannot be present in person. I'm very. I definitely agree with all panelists because, as my experience, I worked for Invimit for 6 years to enhance public-private partnership throughout funds, and it means. To have collaboration more than partnership. Collaboration is the key words that we can use because many speaks about PPPs, but we start with collaboration to set objectives that are based on a shared vision. And many times there is no shared vision. People, you have to manage a lot of relationship. And during 6 years, I changed government 4 times. It means that if you change the governments in 4 times, now we have a government that's more stable. But 4 times means that all people that you open a dialogue, they change. And change also the vision, and change also the politics. So it means that the problem is not only, as the professor said, to have a budget that is a European budget, but also because when you go local, in the local situation is very difficult to operate because you cannot be able to foster collaboration. Collaboration is based on people. And PPP are based on the law. It is very different. And another aspect that is very important that we know that the state-owned or municipality-owned, they have a lot of assets and they have a lot of lands. But if you ask for using these lands for doing some project, for example, there is one now that is very close to go on the market, 2/3 of the surfaces are for social affordable housing, and just 1/3 is for the market. It means that the balance is not right. We cannot are able to finance the entire project and to create the affordable housing if there is enough surface that we can also put on the market. So we have to balance interest, and make profits is something that is a duty, because it means that the project is sustainable, not only sustainable in the sense of the environmental or social capabilities, but also for financial. And now we are discussing in this panel, and also for this event, we are discussing about the financial. For example, now I moved from Invimit to Equiter, Equiter, my role is to be deputy chairman. And it's very interesting because Equiter is advisor for the funds that comes from European Bank. And it means that the private sector can apply to be financed and also can apply for equity for student housing, social housing, regeneration project. I know the process is more complex than go in a bank and ask for money, but the condition that you could be financed are very, very interesting. The time is long, 30 years. And you know, if you go in a bank, that's almost impossible to receive a financing for 30 years. And some point more on top of the Euribor. And the financing is very, very interesting. But the process is more complex. And I also can say that it's not only complex, it's something that introduces the quality inside your project, because the European Union asks for DNSH, so do not significant harm, and so do not impact in a negative way on the environmental and the social aspect. And this certification takes time. But at the end of the story, this certification is very important. If you look at the private sector and private transaction, you don't ask for this certification, but there's a quality that sometimes is not so high. So I think that there is a lot of instruments that we can use. Quid the knowledge is not the same for all. So these events are able to share information. And me too, I'm positive about the collaboration. And also, if the government is more stable, it can be also reached more easily. Thank you.
And about the instrument that we could be used, in your opinion, what could be the role of European funds in this context?
The role of European funds now, as a deputy chairman at Equiter, is my first time that I'm looking at the role of the advisory for European Bank. And so private investor can ask for financing and also for equity. Obviously, in the case of Equiter, there is a bank like Intesa, and Intesa can manage all the process to really check if you are able to receive this type of financing. But it's clear that it's very important that these funds can, in some case, they can be an enabler, an accelerator. And if you think, for example, for student housing, and if you manage a project about student housing, you know that profits are very low. So if you look for financing in a private equity sector, or you look for financing in a bank, you have to move for private equity double-digit interest rate. And if you look in a bank, you have to move to 7, 8, 9% of interest rate. If you go to the funds that are managed, that are available thanks to European Bank, you are around 4, 5%, and you have a long time, so like 20 years, 30 years, that you can be financed. So this role is very, very important, especially for this project where there is a little bit of a failure of the market, because if you look at Italy, there are no student housing. But why there are no student housing? Because the price is not convenient to build. So contribution from the funds like PNRR, so the resilience plan, are good, but they go to finance the operator. And you need to build the student housing where you ask for a lot of money, you need a lot of money. So financing from European funds is very, very important to accelerate and to support this type of investment, where affordable housing is not only for families that cannot afford the rent. It's also for young people, young workers, families, and students, senior, a lot of type of affordable housing. And these funds, in my opinion, can be very, very important. There are a few banks that in Italy can manage these funds, 3 banks, for example, because there are a few banks that could be, they apply to be advisor for a European bank. And this is another piece of the puzzle where if we are not present in this type of competition to be advisor for this fund, it's very difficult for private investor to join and to ask for these funds.
Sorry, only 3 banks?
Yeah, for example, for tourism, there are
Okay.
only 3 banks that are advisor for these funds. And I don't know why, but this is, and the most interesting part of this process is if we don't invest, if we don't use these funds, we lose it. So,
Thank you. And Giancarlo Scotti, what role does CDP real estate asset play in supporting Italy's social and affordable housing market?
So, thank you. First of all, I really want to thank Anna and to have invited me here today. I'm very happy to be at this Castellanza University, at Luke University, and I think the site where we are today is kind of a clear example of what is the topic we are discussing, meaning what can be the urban regeneration and how urban regeneration, because if I'm not wrong, we are here in a former industrial site, was a textile company, was a textile site that has been transformed in a university, in classrooms, in student housing, in places, where it has totally been transformed. And I think this is an exact example of all the challenges that we are facing in our today activity. So today we are talking about housing. Housing is clearly defined as a fundamental human right. It's a fundamental human right defined by the United Nations at the European level, but it's a human right that is facing severe challenges today in Europe, in Italy, and all over the world. So all the people around this table are trying to find a solution in how to face and to give an answer to this right that is absolutely, is fundamental for the sake of also civilization, for the sake of our cities, and also for the sake of our future, with all the challenges that we are facing. And in this angle, this is exactly the mission where GDP, as a national promotional bank, is willing and likes to invest their money, it likes to invest their equity, or is willing to support investment. Because, the way that the National Promotional Bank and CDP at first are willing to do is to consider the investment through not just only the classical financial analysis of risk-return, but to add at the risk-return the concept of impact. So what is driving CDP when CDP is deciding to invest its equity is not to consider not only the clear return that the investment has to generate, because we are talking about saving money, saving postal money, so the investment that we want to do, they do have to guarantee a return, but we want also to consider what sort of impact we have on territory. And therefore, giving an answer to the housing challenges is for sure one of the biggest impact that we can generate to the communities, that we can generate to our territory. So with this taken in mind, CDP started, I would say, in a sort of in a pioneeristic way in 2010, so we're talking about almost 15 years ago, CDP working closely with the bank foundations, which are clear sentinels of what's happening in the territory. We understood in 2010 that housing would have become a challenge, that demographics were changing dramatically, that society were changing, and therefore the concept of housing itself was changing, and there was definitely coming a need that was increasing in order to have a supply for this fundamental right. And therefore in 2010, they started to create a financial model, because what we're talking today is try to find an equilibrium of what is a necessity, of what is a real problem, which is the shortage of capital, and the fact that we want to give a return to our investment, but the investment has to have, let's say, a social meaning before we are trying to give an answer to the demand of houses which are for that part of population that, by the way, is growing dramatically, that cannot afford them to go to let's say, to the free market, but they have to go to a market where you have some capped rents or capped price. So what our products try to do is to give an offer which basically is 30% below, which is the market level. So the answer and the financial model that has been defined, and that since 2010 it have evolved, is to create a mechanism of fund of fund, meaning that was establishing a real estate fund, very long term. We're talking about a fund that normally is attractive for what we call patient capital, so capital that can have a return over the years. So with basic normally is 35, between 30 and 40 years, with a return that is 2% over inflation rate, and where CDP acts as a cornerstone investor, and the goal is to invest in funds which are managed by people that are acting in the territory. So with this mechanism of funds, basically we started the first fund in which CDP almost deployed approximately €1 billion in order to develop a project throughout the country, and now we have 250 projects that are active in the country, and that have the capacity to move more than €4 billion of investments. So this, I think, it's a mechanism, and then today we are trying to discuss about mechanism. I think is a mechanism that we have refined over, let's say, in the following years, because with the first fund that was very much focused in social housing, we create our funds which are focused in student housing, senior housing. I mean, the necessity for houses also for seniors over 65 is increasingly, obviously, dramatically. And then we are launching our last product is to create funds for what we call service housings, meaning to give houses to support mobility for young people, or support mobility also for people who work in the essential services of the state. So I think this sort of mechanism in which you can have a place where you meet private and public funds, this could be an answer in order to face these challenges. And the thing we are very proud about is that we are discussing about this model at European level. We have obtained and we have underwritten the very first national scheme with FEI, which is the arm that invests the equity of the bank of the European Bank, to invest in our student housing plans. And we obtained as well the very first guarantee. We were the first in Europe to obtain a guarantee from Università to invest in social housing. So I would say that for once, I mean, Italy, and with this mechanism of deploying equity in the social housing segment, it's a kind of it's started at European level, and we are able to attract also European resources.
Thank you. You mentioned the student housing. Could you elaborate further?
Sure, with pleasure. I mean, student is for sure is the second of our 4 S's. As I said, we like to define the social housing business in 4 S's, just for the sake of clarity: social, student, senior, and services. And student is for sure one of the most important S's in which we like to work. The mechanism in which we work is, as I mentioned it before, that we have a fund that now is called FNAS, where we do invest in projects which are developed by third parties SGR. Kelly mentioned it, the Olympic Village in Milan. We are proudly, and we are very proud to be part of this fantastic adventure. I think Villaggio Olimpico is definitely not because Kelly's here, but I'm totally online on this. On my opinion, is definitely a best practices, not just at the Italian level, but at European level. Because as Kelly mentioned, I mean, the important thing in order to be successful is to have clear rules. Because when you have clear rules from the beginning, you can obtain clear and tangible results in the very short term. And I think why the Olympic Village is such a fantastic project is a fantastic project because with these clear rules, the Olympic Village will host the athletes in 2026, in the month of March of 2026, and our goal is to open it to students in September 2026. And so the fact that you will have such a short time from the event, that the event clearly is a catalyst for urban regeneration, but the event lasts 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatsoever. Between Olympic and Paralympics will be 4 weeks, while the building will remain forever. The fact that you can go to the final destination in such a short period, I think this is a best practice, clearly not in Italy, but I would say all over the world. And so this is very much appreciated also from the Olympic Village, from the Olympic Committee. So we are I think the need for student housing is absolutely clear. We have a necessity at this country which is enormous. The fact that we are able to give financial support to this project, and clearly Olympic Village is one. We have projects in Naples, which will be the very first, and we will open this project in September 2025. We have it in Rome. We have it in cities where, for the first time, student housing will be given in a structural way. This is very much one of the big missions and most of the most impactful investment classes in which GDP is willing to invest.
Thank you. We have time for one last question, one for all. And you mentioned the Olympic Village, you mentioned social housing and student housing, but how can we balance the interest? Price is an issue, really an issue, and at the same time, return is an issue. So how can we do that? How can we balance the interest?
This is the question. The question is you have to be extremely efficient. We try to be efficient in every single part of the process. I mean, one process in which we tend to discuss, because it's more technical, but it's key, is also to be efficient in the cost construction process. We have to find ways to build in the most efficient way, because the real goal that we do have is not to have a subsidized market. The goal is not to have a subsidized by public. We want to have really a private market that gives return. So we have to be efficient. And I agree 100% with Kelly. We have to have clear rules. The clear rules from the beginning are really the condition in order to be successful, and when I mean successful is to have this kind of equilibrium that we were mentioning before. In a country like ours, where another point of our activities also is not to use existing land, but is to enter in retrofitting process, in reuse process, because we are living in a very built country. So our goal is to reuse existing building. This is a complexity in a complexity.
Is it possible to use the...
Definitely. Yeah. Look where we are. Definitely it is possible. But you have to be efficient because it costs a lot.
But do you have the same return?
You have to work in order to have it.
Yeah.
But I would say of our projects, 70% of our projects are all reuse of existing buildings.
Okay.
70% of our projects are not. 70% are reuse of existing building and not use of existing land. So it's tough, but I mean, we try to do it.
Kelly, Ras.
Giancarlo used a very specific word, which is efficiency. And in our industry, I think in particular, because obviously you're talking about large amounts of capital that are being invested, time is crucial. So if I go back to the example of the Olympic Village, because of the clear rules, we were able to start construction on January 2nd, 2023, and we're delivering. This summer we'll be delivering to Fondazione Milano Cortina, and then we have the conversion. And I think going back to a word that Giovanna mentioned, which is collaboration, there also with the institution in Fondazione Cortina has been crucial, because we've been able to make agreements not only for sustainability, but also for efficiency, because instead of, for example, for the Olympic Village, buying furniture, throwing it away, and us rebuying, we have made the agreement that we will be buying all of the fit out of all of the units of the 1,700 beds in order for the athletes to use, and then they will remain. And so that way it's already will be fitted out directly for the student use. These seem like small details, but it goes with the collaboration needed in order to be efficient and cut costs. And if I could add a third, before passing to Luca.
We have time.
I would say a very clear administrative contractual framework. And I think this needs to be updated, because regularly we find ourselves at the table, and I'm sure that you all will agree, where instead of having a clear contractual framework within to be able to understand how to reach the end goal, which we're all working, I think, in this phase. Any sensible operator that's working in territorial development, I think, thinks about the financial, the social, and the environmental impact that's being created. But if you don't have this clear contractual framework, obviously you lose time. So on another project in Porta Nuova, we signed the first agreement in order to manage the public park. It took 3 years of negotiation with the municipality to understand what type of framework we were talking about and arrive down to, then obviously they're able to use that model and fortunately use it in other areas. But I think that there needs to be a study performed in how it is that when you're working with these complex territorial or urban regeneration projects, what contractual framework can be upgraded and updated in order to face what we're facing today.
Okay, so time, efficiency, and what else?
Well, looking at the systemic approach, I think that here the opportunity is is to scale up the market. And scale up the market, there are different factors. I mean, housing is, as I said, the cog putting a lot of things together. Unfortunately, in Europe, as long as I'm aware, there is no common definition of what does it mean social housing.
Affordable in Europe.
Affordable.
In Europe, we talk about affordable housing, not social housing. So it's
social. I mean, what is happening in Vienna is completely different. What is happening in Copenhagen, and what is happening in Sevilla is different from what is happening in Thessaloniki.
Totally.
That's not good for a big investors. An American big investors who have to put money in a fund, he wants to know what is happening. So I think that there is some basic work that we have to do in Europe to go back to definitions, in the sense that, I mean, go back on common things. If we want to scale up, if we want to have a capital market to step in this game, we cannot be trapped in a locality definition or things which are actually creating only opacity for the market. So I think that the lens that we have to look at the housing problem is a capital markets union. From my point of view, of course, I'm a partisan. I work for the bank, so don't trust me. But I mean, that's the basic. And then I think there is a big problem. The elephant in the room is that how we will build these houses. Where is the value chain? Where are the workers? Where is the labor forces to build these houses? Houses are increasing cost, and we are blocking immigration in every single country. I mean, for me, the two things, they don't go together. When I have meetings in Athens, they ask me, where are the workers? Where are the SME? I mean, what is the average size of SME to produce whatever, windows? Where are access to the commodities? Are we forgetting someone? I mean, for me, this is a global story. Europe should be linked with Africa. We need commodities. We need material. We need people to work in our... So, I mean, sometimes I see a bit of schizophrenic reaction where we don't see this as an harmonic ecosystem, where we need to look at the basics, which are common definitions, legal framework, guarantee scheme at the European level, and link with the global story. Carbon credit, for example. We need to build a carbon credit market which we can link the markets in Tanzania to Europe. We need to convince a pension fund in Frankfurt to invest in Tunisia without any major problem. We are not yet there. And that's I think, the drama that we have to face. And that's the opportunity of drafting from the basics, from the general to the particular. We should not go from the particular to the general. It's a basic methodological approach on how we...
Same rules.
Yeah, I think we should go back to René Descartes, Cartesio, who was proposing that Europe will be saved with a method. The method will, and actually René Descartes was saying also another thing, that you have always to doubt about yourself, dubito ergo sum. And I think doubting about our legal system is something quite helpful, which can help in designing a systemic approach. Otherwise, we don't move money. And if we don't move money, we are back to square one.
Okay. So, European framework, it could be... Yeah. Okay. So, and Giovanna, Dalla Posta?
Yeah, I'm totally agree. And time and efficiency, scale up are all ingredients very, very important. And I'm very agree with Mr. Bertolot, because I'm working on a project in Amazonia for producing carbon credits in very wide land. You cannot apply the same project in Italy because there are no collaboration about the institution that own forests, because 30% of our country is covered by forests. So totally agree. I think that there is another point that I want to introduce, is about to be profitable. I know that efficiency is really, it's a duty. We have to be efficient in every project, in every moment, every time of our life. But to be also profitable, because without profit, investors cannot come. It's it's a dream that they come, they invest, and they ask for they want to create something that have a social impact. They want to do something that have a social impact, but it's obvious that they want also to create something that is profitable. It doesn't mean that you have to be obviously speculative. It's different to be speculative instead of to be profitable. But the project have to be sustainable on the financial key drivers. And funds have to support. But without funds, the project doesn't exist the first year, and the second year, what you do? The third year, how you can finance this project. When you look at the funds that comes from European Union, our PNRR, so you look at it as something that is the next generation project. If you go in a project like carbon credits, mining for minerals and other projects like this, they say this is a multi-generation project. This is a perpetual project. So you have not to look only to your next generation. If you do something that is profitable and sustainable by the financial side, it means that you are creating something that can go ahead, and also is something that can survive to our generation, something that we can really left to our son and daughters.
Thank you. Thank you to all.
Thank you so
And
much.
now,
Thank you. Grazie, Anna.
Thank you.
and now we can start with the second panel discussion. And I'm going to Roberta Cocco, expert in digital transformation, university lecturer and board member. Leonardo Cavalli, managing partner of OneWorks.
Thank
e
you.
Paloma Taltavul. Allora, Roberta Cocco, how, in your opinion, new technologies are impacting housing sector in the connection between need and sustainability?
Okay, so thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a pleasure, and I try to bring a different lens to this conversation, the lens of digital transformation, and how digital transformation is a powerful enabler of affordable and also sustainable housing. Let me give you three key points. The first one is considering a smart home system and, for example, IoT-based sensors. These can be used in a way to reduce consumption and detect anomalies or in different areas, heating, cooling, lighting system. At the same time, if you develop this kind of system from the very beginning of the construction, you can also connect with the building something called digital energy dashboard, for example, which offers on one side to the constructor the monitoring of how this building can be improved and improved. On the other side, for the people living there, you have something embedded in the building that can manage in a very easy way how they can reduce cost, how they can monitor. And so this is one example. We have different cases all over Europe of buildings which were built with these digital enabler embedded. The second is to use for the housing digital twins. And this would be very useful for the public sector. Digital twins is quite a common reference, which is virtual replicas of buildings or neighborhoods. And this can help public authorities to simulate the long-term impact of the building, of the construction. And these might help them to make the right choices in a sense, even before a single brick is laid. So you can use this technology to understand how is the better way to build this. We are used to consider digital something in other aspects. We use personas when we have to develop an app or a service, or also for marketing reason. If we think about building, you can use digital twins in an amazing, useful way. And the third point is how to consider technology and digitization in a sense as a real social and economic sustainable lever. I mean, there are some examples. Let me share with you. Oh, do you want to present her?
Just say hello to Paloma Taltavul from the University of Alicante. Can
hello,
you hear us?
Sorry, yeah, I just,
okay.
I just leave 1 minute.
Oh,
no, you are freeze.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
I can go on.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay, my third point is, and I give you an example and then explain.
Yeah.
In Barcelona, there is something called the Civic Technology Office. This Civic Technology Office was built to support inclusive housing models and giving citizens digital tools to co-design their own houses, sharing with the public entity their needs. I think this is a great way to use technology to overcome something that might be, not inclusive housing, and something that Kelly and the other speaker said before is very important, because you have to balance efficiency and also the capability to offer what you are building to all, so to the entire population. So trying to understand how, through technology, you can collect the needs, and also if you have any specific lack of capacity, you can try to engage the population in the building. I stop here and maybe I add something later.
Okay, but in your opinion, how can ECT, new technology, be engaged in the collaboration between public and private.
Yeah, and then the private
Yeah.
partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's public-private partnership is not only possible. I think it's essential nowadays, considering that technology and digitization is everywhere and is part of our personal and professional life, and we have to evolve in the in the traditional construction model. And something that we have heard is exactly in this direction. Here again, let me give you quick examples. ICT can be engaged as, which is the simplest, solution provider. So ICT sector can offer cloud-based models, AI, which is a kind of buzzword nowadays, AI models or sensors, IoT devices, analytics, cybersecurity, which is so important, day after day. And so ICT should be engaged from the very beginning, at the first table, in order to build together with public and private needs. The second point is technology can offer transparency and accountability. One of the keywords of today is, efficiency and cut cost, which is definitely important. And I think that, digital tools can help in this way. And the third point, which in my very opinion is probably the most important one, ICT sector can offer support for digital inclusion. We cannot offer digital service if we are not sure that everyone can use it. Everyone can use it. Public is not ready to share digital culture. Constructors should do their very good work, but ICT can be also engaged in helping people, residents, in digital literacy programs or developing digital services in order to be very, very easy to use, and so on. One example that I have in mind is the Housing Association in the UK, which is supported by a private company. I don't remember which one, but they partners with tech firms and with a constructor to build services and to offer basic digital skills to people. So if I have to sum up this specific part, I would think that private-public partnership should add another P, which is a platform-based partnership, which means try to squeeze the value of technology to offer a real better service to people.
Thank you. And we discussed a lot about the public-private partnership. So I would like to ask you, what do you think about that? Which measure, in your opinion, is really great?
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for inviting me first. And I will actually, I feel a bit threatened to be among all these very experts of finance, and I'm just a humble architect, so you'll forgive me if I say anything stupid. Let me start. I heard a few words today, and they're all very interesting, but you listed a couple of words, maybe three: time, efficiency, or maybe profit. And this somehow reminded me of a very beautiful book on history of architecture called Space, Time, and Architecture. And I'd love to sort of focus on these three words to start with. Space. And again, maybe not trying to break any of the current rhetoric about planning, but maybe just trying to put a couple of topics on the table which may be of some interest to you all. Space. Somebody mentioned, I think Giancarlo mentioned, we're actually sitting in Castellanza in a beautiful regeneration of an industrial site. is it Milan or is it Castellanza? I think space is relevant when talking about also housing, and particularly housing costs and prices. Are we really sure that maybe redefining the boundaries of a region or of a city isn't an opportunity to actually look into the topic we're actually discussing today, affordability of the housing stock? It's funny, if you think of Castellanza, industrial driven city in the past, now the place for a very prominent and relevant university with an international role. And believe it or not, in this I refer to Luca, what he was saying before, they've closed the train station. This is quite incredible to me. It's a way of not really thinking of a wider area as the actual urbanized place for a population or a community to live in. When we discussed the idea of potentially extending the boundaries, I'm not really talking of anything new. Milan, more than a century ago, possibly a century and a half or maybe 2 centuries ago, actually did already this step. What was called the Corpi Santi, which were the 11 little municipalities around Milan, were actually brought into the town and made a larger city. So I'm not suggesting anything particularly new, something which has happened already, and which may be on the planning side. I understand it may not be directly financial too, but on the planning side, something we should think about. Of course, it's not just extending the boundary; it's not changing a line on a map. And I think somebody said that a city is not just housing; it's also infrastructure and services. I remember a beautiful phrase by Peter Smithson, a British architect, when he was saying, well, really, the houses are the feeling of being someone sitting somewhere. I think that's very clever to me. It's not just quantities or availabilities, is making a place a real place, which has to do with sort of immaterial values, but also with real values. Reopening the station in Castellanza may be one good step. Service at university is actually quite a sort of service or maybe an excellence of a region. So I think this may be one topic which may be of some relevance to put on the table of politicians, as I heard Paola discussing the idea that these should be topics to be put in front of politicians to think about. The other thing is time. Sorry, I might be too long. If I'm too long, you tell me.
No worry. We have time.
I guess, and this I'm entering maybe a field which I might feel a bit uncomfortable with. I guess time is relevant even for the cost of what I'm buying or what I'm renting. It's time in terms of shortening the time construction, but it's also maybe a time of taking more time to actually repay what I'm getting. And I was lucky enough to be part of a discussion a few years ago in Camden where somebody crazy decided to submit to the Camden Council and then went to the banks to see whether they could develop a housing scheme with an idea of repaying back in 100 years. Of course, it didn't work. But I guess the whole idea was whether extending the time was making the actual action of every day more affordable for people. If I think of the Golden Gate was repaid in 50 years, not in 10 years, not in 20 years. So maybe there's room for a different approach from finance. But if you think, and again, not to sort of try and say something which is totally new, that everything has happened already. In 1947, this country put up a law called the Legge Fanfani, which then eventually became Case Gescal in 53, if I'm not mistaken, which was actually, and I'm coming back to the PPP.
No.
It was actually a form of PPP. It was actually getting the money from at the time, what they were called industrialists. They were not called entrepreneurs. From the workers, given to a insurance company, INA, which then INA Casa, to actually manage and develop houses which were repaid through a rent in more than 30 years. So maybe it worked for a while, then it went sort of corrupted for other reasons, but it worked. They built actually quite beautiful buildings, some very interesting boroughs in Rome, in many parts of the country, not just the big towns. So maybe time is also something we should think about. I'll stop you. I will get to architecture. Maybe I'll go with your next question. Sorry.
In your opinion, can this model be applied only on the new construction, or we can apply on the...
I think Giancarlo gave an answer to that. So we live in a built environment. Italy in particular, is actually a built country. So maybe leveraging on what we have is the first very sustainable action we can do. And there's no point not to look into it. Well, they said 70% of the projects they're looking at they're actually refurbishments. Probably 80% of the projects we do are actually refurbishments. So it's actually similar numbers. I don't see why this would eventually change. Of course, it will change in terms, if you think of the construction timing and technologies. Of course, building from scratch will probably allow you to be more efficient and maybe cost efficient as well. But I think we should take into account the idea that actually repurposing or regenerating existing sites is the most sustainable action we can actually do. Half of the embodied carbon is already there and is already spent. So we have the arm which we can make to the environment if we start from existing buildings. And there's actually examples, and I agree that we always talk about this country in a bit of a funny and maybe negative way, but it is true that things are happening which are also interesting. We're doing a regeneration project in Rimini, a town on the Italian coast, where part of the idea, the private developer is promoting the project, but one part of the land is given back for some proper social housing, not even affordable housing, be built by the public sector on the land which is actually provided by the public. In a way, is a kind of PP. Yeah, is that the two sides working on the same land, together with some of the things like a student housing development as well. So I think, and is partially a regeneration of a site. It's not a greenfield operation. So I don't see any difference between the two. In a way, it's like I don't know whether anybody knows about the Berliner Zimmer, which was actually something very interesting. The Friedrichstown Inn, when they built Berlin in the 17th century and the 18th century, there was this very social idea, in a way, of actually having within every single block what was called the Berliner Zimmer, which was the least favorable place to live in the courtyard, because it has a tiny window in the corner, but it would provide social complexity within the block and within the neighborhood. So maybe we should take the Berliner Zimmer to a different level, and the Rimini case is exactly that, where you actually develop housing for the market, services, but also social housing within the same part of the town. So it's not just extending the borders to sort of push out the poorer. It's actually extending the borders to provide more opportunities, and always, though, thinking about social equality within every single area of the town, or the new town, which I hope we will be able in the future to sort of redesign.
But in your opinion, it's more simple to manage the regeneration building or new construction?
I don't think everything has its own challenges. I don't think that is a very relevant topic for what we're discussing. It may be in other places, in other regions. If you're talking the Asian market, it may be different. But I don't think Europe is already trained, and particularly Italy. And I think this is something, again, we will have to sort of think and maybe export to other places, is actually something we know and we can easily deal with. So I can't see a major difference between the two.
So, Paloma Taltavul, in your opinion, how challenging priorities for improving housing in the UNICE region?
Okay, thank you very much. I want to start thanking for the invitation for this activity. This is a very not new but very discussed topic in most of countries in Europe, right? So challenges and priorities. Let me divide. Let me separate both in order to fix more on the causes and then consequences nowadays, right? So the affordability is this first thing I want to highlight is a general problem in most countries. So our history, the history says that the affordability normally is a local problem, that it depends of the combination between demographic and economic characteristics, right? But in this period, the problem is very general. We have run inside the UNICE an analysis asking for different countries, more than 50 countries answers, asking for their perception of what is causing the housing affordability. And what was surprised was that they answer quite similar causes, similar. So this is global problem, and the global problem is coming from the unsolved related financial crisis problems that we still have now. In an environment where demographics are growing and changing substantially, like in the previous panel, some of the speakers comment. So what are the challenges we have now? There are two main challenges, two main. One is a huge lack of supply, and the second is the lack of finance. This both are become like a barrier to don't allow the housing market to work in the proper way in order to assign housing. And the assignation of housing has a quite important and general how to say result, which is in most of the countries, time to time there are more households that cannot enter in the house or can find very difficult to pay the housing cost and covering the medium income household. This is something very clearly identified in most of countries, in which medium income household that normally has affordable to find a house, now they cannot enter. And this has derived different processes associated to this. For instance, housing policy measures doesn't work, doesn't fulfill their aims due to they cannot reach those households that need a house and cannot enter due to their economic characteristics, and so blocking part of the support, public support. This is found in most of Eastern countries, also in southern countries, in Southern European countries, and I saw some comment from Western countries, UK, Ireland, that find also this effect, right? This is one thing, and this is one of the challenges to update the housing policy to the real needs we found now in the housing market. This is one thing. But talking about lack of supply, the lack of supply is a direct result from the global financial crisis. If you see the evolution of housing starts, it's incredible to see how all the housing cycles were dropped substantially during 2012 until 2013-14 is rise to the minimum, and only few countries has recovered the previous construction activity. So during 10 years, so generating a huge um, scarcity of new housing that could cover the, if they never happen, could cover the needs now. So the limitation of housing has provoked another problems that also need to be also countries face as a challenge, need to be reviewed, which is lack of land. After 10 years of no construction, of very, very few construction, just think about Italy, Spain, Greece, the Ireland as well. Probably most of plannings are old or stopped. So when the housing demand start to develop, these housing plannings are started to be started to be in the process again, but it takes very long time. So there is a scarcity of land in some places, not in others, that are reducing the capacity of building. But there are also limited number of workers. So workers, specialist workers, are one aspect claimed for almost all countries we have asked. Also in my country, we are following this in Spain. The scarcity of workers is one of the signals. And this scarcity are also related to the low level of construction. And it's quite difficult to recover this unless each government don't develop a very strong process of education for workers in construction. As my previous speaker says, in Europe, we have a very specialized needs of specialization for the workers. For instance, in Italy and Spain, with a lot of historical buildings, we need very, very high specialization in order to do the work, the construction well and under the regulations. No, so this is another challenge. The big one is how recover the level of construction that our current societies need in order to reduce the affordability, the problems of affordability. From my perspective, the problems of affordability are coming due to very specific markets. So there are strong problems in the cities, in the main cities, rather than in other areas. So this is very, very focused on the space. And the problems coming from the excess on demand and lack of supply. So this is a very perfect combination in the market to make prices to grow up, and then difficult to solve unless we increase the supply. The supply could be increased for new construction or existing renovations or use. So both are potential solutions for the cities. But second limit, the limit of finance. Construction is an activity, you know better than me. It's an activity that is very risky, first thing, because it implies a huge amount of investment that normally are not available for the companies. So the companies are small, medium-sized, the majority, and they have not, maybe capacity to have in their account the equity enough to deal with a construction by themselves. So the finance is something that is needed. Traditionally, the finance are coming from the regular financial institutions from the global financial crisis. This has changed, completely changed. And then the new solutions, as Giampiero relayed before, the new solutions are create like an environment where companies related, not only construction, related to real estate building, and real estate is more general concept, right? Could issue bonds like green bonds or social bonds in the case of sustainable housing, and in order or create another new ways to attract finance. to make the projects to go on again. So finance could reduce the lack of supply. And with reducing lack of supply, we could go ahead dealing with the problem of affordability. But this is quite needed. So the affordability problems are not from now. The statistics tell us that the lack of affordability is coming from previous to COVID. COVID changed most markets. In some markets, prices rise more quickly due to the COVID and change on tastes due to the COVID. But I think that now we are going to the equilibrium now, and in order to reduce affordability, the challenge we have is reduce the lack of supply, addressing more finance or other type of finance or other type of support to housing recovery, renovation, or new construction. It depends of the land. I'm not sure that I have answered your question.
Yeah, sure. But and Leonardo Cavalli, sorry. Paloma Taltaful spoke about lack of supply and lack of finance. What do you think about that lack of supply?
Supply meaning supply of the housing.
Yeah.
Well, I think again, I'm not a statistician, I'm not a finance person, so I can only speak of what I see. But I think it really depends on, again, the boundaries you're looking at. I don't think there is a lack of supply in, I don't know, some little town in central Italy. There's actually an abundance of offer. Of course, if we look at Milan, and Milan as it is today, or as we name it, so the very center of a metropolitan region, then there is a lack of supply. So I think it really depends on the lenses and the size of the map you're actually looking at. And I'm not talking about, I'm not sure about Spain, I'm not sure, but I know a bit about the UK. Actually, in the UK, we had the chance to work with the Minister of Transport. As interesting, it was Minister of Transport and not the Minister of Housing, in a project where the idea was to actually revamp the old railway track between Oxford and Cambridge to develop a new city of about 2 million people. This is because of the lack of the houses in London. With the idea of actually using a kind of existing transport infrastructure, you know, it misses bits and pieces, but something easy to sort of remodel, and leverage on the actual transport infrastructure, public transport infrastructure, to actually build houses for 2 million people. So I think it really depends on the region, and lack of finance, I'm not sure. I think again, there's other people who can better answer this question in this room. But I think the supply, again, goes back to how do you define a perimeter you are looking at.
Border. Thank you. And Roberta Cocco, lack of supply and lack of finance again. But in your opinion, how can the digital tools help us to go over that?
These are two big issues,
yeah,
of course. But if you think about supply, I totally agree with him. I think if we think about Milano, where there is an increasing request of supply, the problem is evident and maybe large. In other part of the country or of Europe, because we are Europe now. Maybe, I'm not an expert, but there is abundance of supply. So how can technology could support this? It's quite simple with dashboards, with networks. If you don't have to go to the nearest supplier to get your needs, but you can be able to ask for a huge market which is simply intermediated by digital platform you do not suffer from the lack of supply. It's so simple. And you can also track the prices, the timing. I think that all of us are used to buy something on Amazon, and we don't know. We probably understand if this specific item comes from the local market or, from abroad when we look at the time. So if it is 2 weeks, maybe it comes from very far. If it is 3 hours, maybe it's the market you have in front of your house, which will offer you. So I think that this might be a very useful, tool for. I can't say finish, but maybe reduce the lack of supply. And about finance, here again, we should be very honest in defining that sometimes lack of finance, it's just a way to cover other problems. If I am a small constructor, maybe it would be very hard for me to find someone, a financial institute, which is able to trust my project. If I am a big constructor, maybe even if I ask more money, I would have a different opportunity. But there are new ways of putting together the constructor and, a new way of financial support. Let me share with you one example, which really surprised me. The project is called Homes for All, and it is supported by the municipality of Turin, and it put together innovation, social impact, and financial business model. And so this kind of startup produced a kind of dashboard to collect the needs for the people who will be able to get those specific houses. Using technology, a municipality could manage a waiting list, could try to collect money, and at the end you have a kind of matching. On one side, the request of people, on the other side, the offering of municipality. And something which is interesting from the financial point is that this project is paid by results. So the municipality is paying in connection with, so is giving rewards connected to the savings that this platform is generating, which is a different way. It's not for a big scale, but Turin is not so small. I mean, municipality of Turin is not so small, and so. Here again, someone before told about we have to evolve the concept of public-private partnership. This is a way. This is just an example, maybe a small example, but if you are at the same table and you also have someone else offering you the right technology, I think you can really evolve the way of PPP.
Thank you. And once again, Paloma Taltavul, public and private partnership. What do you think about that in your opinion or in your experience?
Well, I fully agree with the previous speakers. I think that public and private partnership is something we is need in order to not only to solve this problem, but always. So construction and developing urban development is a huge area, and the government as such alone normally is not prepared, not ready to do it alone. So they need to, for several reasons, to combine their actions with private initiative. And now in this period, the private initiative is quite important because it's the only way to canalize the incentives from the government. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about regulation and aims. in order to solve some social problems now, right? There are many. I think it's nothing new. Also agree with my colleague in the table in the panel. We have a long history, very long evidence that most of the public housing plans have been driven by agreement with private developers, private finance institutions, and so on. So it's the way to do it. And the only issue is just sit and agree at the plan. So I fully agree.
Thank you. So just a last question about new technologies and digital tools. What do you think they could be used to manage this situation? Oh, sorry, I forgot them.
It's all right. Today is the day of answering questions
Yes,
on topics I don't know anything about.
No.
Right, sorry, and I'm joking a bit. But I think when we talk this technology, for us, as architects, there's two ways of looking at it. One is actually the tools we use, which are somehow related to eventually the tools which may be used to actually manage things outside, when they're sort of outside sitting somewhere in the land. But again, just to stick to the idea, because we're pretty fixated about this idea of space and boundaries. I totally agree with the idea that actually technology is one way to actually release opportunities on a wider space, because this is what we do every day. People in the office work maybe 1-2 days a week from home. That's a clear example on how geography and technology work together. It's an opportunity for the larger regions. It's an opportunity to build proper communities and not just dormitories. It's an opportunity, technology is a tool to help real life or physical life to stabilize also in areas which are not necessarily the one around the corner from our office. So this is what I can sort of try and say, or I understand from what we said before. It's in a way is an infrastructure, as much as trains as an infrastructure. They're all tools to bring people together, although they might sit in different places. And is actually a tool more than a train that works both also when you are together or you're actually part of a company for a while. So this is what I can say about technology. And then, of course, there is the other side, which is actually how do we use technology to actually enhance and produce our projects, which somehow may be considered. You were talking about the digital twins. Somehow our work is the beginning of the story of a digital twin, but I don't think that really matters within this context.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Roberta Cocco. Thank you, Leonardo Cavalli. And thank you to Paloma Teltavul. And now, Michele Lertora.
Thank you for leaving me the floor to conclude. Well, first of all, we are very pleased to have organized this event, to have had the opportunity to listen to different point of views from banks, real estate developers, institutional investors, architects, and so on. As academics, we would like to be able to collect all these insights and all these suggestions from the real world in our research. We are currently drafting and preparing a research paper on this topic, which we are finalizing over the next week. And of course, we will take care of all the insightful inputs that we received during this event. We would like finally to conclude thanking the moderator for managing the discussion, all the speakers online and the one who managed to come here physically at Luke, UNEC for trusting us in confidence in developing our work, that we are proceeding further, and of course all the attendants physically, and especially the international one, who are attending the event remotely. So finally, at the beginning, Anna Gervasoni started the discussion as director of EXUF, but she would like to say a final remark as a rector of the university. So I leave the floor.
I would like to thank you, all of us, and first Michele, because Michele worked so hard together with Margherita Mietto to organize this event and to organize our database and to organize our platform. We register all the meeting and then we will send to you, and if will be okay for you, it will be a pleasure for us to put in our platform. Now we have many people in distance. Let me say bye-bye to everyone and thank you very much for being with us.